A global tech outage disrupted operations across multiple industries. The outage forced airlines to halt flights and broadcasters to go off air. It's caused systems problems for everything from banking to healthcare. The major outage has been attributed to a faulty software update from cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike. The firm's software is used by scores of industries around the world to protect against hackers and outside breaches. The CrowdStrike update has been causing computers running Windows to crash and display the so-called blue screen of death. CrowdStrike has since deployed a fix. Let's get more on this. Alex Cadier is at the Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands, and Rama Young is here in Nairobi joining us live for more on this. Rama and Alex, welcome to the program, but let's start with you, Alex. This outage is a nightmare for airlines and airports. What is the situation where you are?
Yeah, you're right. And tiny software update, massive disruption. That's what we've seen all day here at the Europe's second busiest airport, Amsterdam Schiphol Airport. We saw queues all the way across this departure hall. It's clearing up a little bit now, and that tracks with what the airport has been saying. Schiphol Airport saying that all of these issues should be resolved by tomorrow morning. The Dutch airline KLM saying that there will possibly still be delays and cancellations, but the problem has broadly been fixed. But we spoke to people here who had been waiting hours and hours to get information on their flight, most of them quite complimentary actually about the organization at Schiphol Airport, but certainly disruption across the board. And this is peak season. People were going on holiday, hoping to be with their families, their loved ones, and none of them, a lot of them I should say, didn't even get past the airport.
All right, Rama, we've heard what Alex has had to say. Rama, talk to us about the impact that's been felt across Africa. Who's been affected and what has been the impact?
Indeed. So let me just start in South Africa, actually. Capitec, the largest bank there, at least by the number of clients, they essentially had some of their services, mobile money, card transactions, that sort of thing, essentially disrupted for the better part of the day. But they do say that the systems are now essentially back online. They're trying to clear the backlog of client orders that were coming through. Pretty much like what happened with a lot of the clients where Acadia is, of course, in Schiphol. Kenya Airways, one of the bigger carriers here in Eastern Africa, they also got hit particularly hard. In fact, they put out a statement at 1300 GMT saying, look, some customers may experience minor disruptions as the system stabilizes, but by and large, tracking with what we're seeing with other carriers around the world, in Western Europe and in the United States, they're essentially saying, look, we've got this sorted. Now it's just clearing up the backlog as well. We also did check with the Kenyan Bankers Association in the afternoon here in Kenya. And they said, look, we're aware of this specific problem that has come through this specific botched update from CrowdStrike on their Falcon sensor software. But as far as they're concerned, no bank has been affected at all. And the biggest telecommunications firm in Eastern Africa, Safaricom, also we checked in with them. And they're saying, look, GSM data services essentially okay. That has not been affected. You could essentially still call customer service and get through to talk to someone. But for some of the devices, some of the PCs that these individuals are working on, they essentially were suffering from the exact same problem, right? That blue screen of death crash that was coming up, partly because this update had been installed. But CrowdStrike did say, look, we've put out an update, we've identified the problem, we've rolled out an update to essentially fix it. So hopefully this will essentially now be a process of just clearing up over the next 24 to 48 hours. Richard?
All right, Alex, it's right back to you. Alex, that leads me very nicely to my next question. Alex, how are those affected dealing with the situation, and what are you hearing has been the cause? Has there been any reaction from the governments in Europe?
Yeah, we've seen reaction from a number of governments across the board. The first question, of course, with something of this scale affecting so many different industries and continents, as you've heard just now, is that could it have been a cyber attack? Could we have been vulnerable to something much more nefarious? The answer across the board from Australia to here in the Netherlands was no. This was just a botched software update. But even so, people here will say, well, how did one software update cause all of this chaos? And the governments are reacting to that. The Dutch government saying that they are now going to look into the vulnerabilities to make sure that this kind of domino effect won't happen again. That will be the priority. They have said this is not a cyber attack, so there will be some reassurance there, but there will be a huge question about a tiny software update disrupting thousands of people's lives. There were people here going on holiday, seeing family members, as I said, patiently waiting. It was relatively well organized, but still thousands of people told not to come to the airport, thousands of plans disrupted, but also a huge financial cost for the airlines, for tourism, for holidaymakers alike. So a lot of questions still to be answered on how such a small vulnerability could impact quite so many people.
All right, finally, Rama, a scary situation nonetheless with these developments. Is it right to say that the global IT systems remain very vulnerable? Does Africa have in place measures to protect its systems from a similar outage?
Right. So does this essentially say that our systems are, or rather that, this is essentially a critical vulnerability? Well, there's a couple of ways of thinking about it, because you see, before today, for most of us around the world, we'd never really heard of a company like CrowdStrike, not unless you're in the cybersecurity space or you're a tech vendor and so on and so forth. In fact, the closest that perhaps many of us had gotten to knowing what CrowdStrike is would be seeing their adverts, their banners, essentially on the side of the vehicles that Lewis Hamilton and George Russell were essentially driving around the Hungarian GP in first practice about 2 hours ago, because they are a sponsor of the Mercedes-AMG Formula One team. The reality, though, is this, that as companies essentially expand access to services through the internet, right? We're packing a lot more services, a lot more data into the cloud. And that market is a highly concentrated one, because it's literally just in the hands of 3 companies. Between them, Microsoft through Azure Cloud Services, Amazon with Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud. Between the 3 of them, that's 2/3, right, of global cloud services around the world. Now, add in the fact that a lot of companies are reliant on the services of firms like CrowdStrike, and you end up with an element of concentration risk that has suddenly started to build up within the system. There will, of course, be questions that will be asked and policy changes that might be triggered by this, because that sort of system vulnerability is something that will be making policymakers take a second look at exactly how vulnerable systems that we rely on every day to make our payments, to book our flights, to pay our employees, pay our suppliers. Some policymakers will certainly be asking questions around that. But I think in the larger scheme of things, an incident like this is largely a one-off. Yes, it's happened. It's highly inconvenient for many, many companies around the world. But if you look at all the incident threat reports that we tend to see on this end of the world, if you look at the cyber incident response teams here in Kenya and the reports they put out from the Communications Authority, you look at the intel reports on cyber threats coming through from firms like Kaspersky, the bulk of the problems tend to be more around social engineering, right? Phishing attacks, that sort of thing. Those are way more prevalent, and those are actually increasing in amount right across the board. So this incident, while it is an outlier, and it certainly has caused a fair bit of pain and discomfort, and it's costing companies and individuals billions and billions of dollars very likely, at the end of the day, it's a bit of an outlier, and it's not really something a government can directly resolve.
All right, let's leave it there for now. Alex Cartier in Schiphol Airport and Rama Young here in Nairobi, thanks for that.